Hey guys, I hope you're well. Want to discuss some big news, as you probably have already heard. Aaron Smith Levin was arrested and then released initially for felony assault, which by the time it all got processed was simple battery. So he's potentially looking, although very doubtful, he's potentially looking at 6 months in jail. So that's the opener of kind of what has exactly happened. I don't have a lot to say about it. Obviously, it didn't happen to me. I was not there. Although I might attend the courtroom cases in the future. But, you know, if anybody wanted a kind of a quicker rundown than watching the whole stream or whatever, essentially, long story short, what happened is that Aaron Smith Levin has been protesting outside of the flag base. That's the Fort Harrison Hotel, the 1920s Art Deco hotel out in Clearwater, Florida, which is kind of the head base of Scientology. There's so many ways you could protest, and it's tough to maneuver because obviously Scientology will be looking at every single way that you might potentially commit an illegality. One of the legal things that you could do, which is not vandalism, is make designs in chalk, essentially brighten up or draw attention to your protest to the ills of Scientology by simply writing outside of the Fort Harrison Hotel. Now, it should be said, there are all these eager efforts to get these group of protesters arrested or trespassed, but Scientology made a mistake by putting their headquarters in a downtown area. And if you're a massive building, if you're a hotel, even if you're a private hotel, you're not really a hotel. If you have this outside portion that is right downtown in the middle of a significant city, there'd be some reasonable expectation that there'd be pedestrians walking by and that the public would have a right to use that outdoor space. So they can't really get them with that. If they get super close, like right on the steps next to the door, that's a different story. But Aaron and his crew have been pretty mindful of staying away. So what's the one thing that can happen? Well, with all the chalk stuff, the Church of Scientology began aggressively pouring water to try to get the chalk out. Now, of course, there's nothing against this either. You're allowed to draw with the chalk, and you're also allowed to try to erase the chalk on the other side. But as the water was being poured, Aaron went to a man with a shirt and tie, kind of looked like the usual Sea Org uniform in that regard, although he apparently identified himself as a security guard, and he tried to trump up those charges and say that it should be more serious because if there's assault on a peace officer, then that's a felony charge, and that's a lot more significant, although Aaron rightly claimed that he just saw a guy in a white shirt and a black tie, which is a typical normal Scientologist uniform, quite frankly. So that didn't hold water. But essentially what happened is that Aaron threw quite a bit of chalk in this dude's face, and quite a bit, and somewhat aggressively. Not so aggressively where the person felt like he would be physically harmed or assaulted or punched or slapped or hit by Aaron or anything like that, but at least with enough aggression where he came up to the person. There wasn't any mutual conversation before, because sometimes you could have more of a claim if you say there was some sense of mutually assured destruction, although I think Florida doesn't necessarily, or Florida does have that, California wouldn't have that, Florida does have that. So there's some sense of mutually assured destruction. These people getting involved in this conversation, having that slowly escalating, where people kind of understand the terms of their interactions and the consequences of it. That wasn't necessarily there because Aaron just went up to the guy, threw quite a bit of chalk. Now, it should be noted, oddly enough, even though COVID is long gone, the Scientology dude actually had a mask. So, what is the actual definition of bodily harm? If it's interesting to analyze, will Scientology be successful in prosecuting Aaron or getting him prosecuted by the district attorney out in Clearwater? But in order to prove that, you have to cause bodily harm, disfigurement, or disability. So here's an example. If I threw acid in somebody's face, that would be causing bodily harm. Danny got into some trouble. Danny, part of Scientology, God bless him, but he was a little too eager to use the pepper spray. That causes bodily harm. But throwing chalk at somebody is the same thing as throwing a bag of Doritos in somebody's face. It's not really anything. it would be the same thing as throwing a bunch of papers at somebody's face. If you get really mad at a court case and you throw papers in somebody's face, that's not an illegality. That's not prosecutable in any single way, shape, or form. That's probably not even liable in a lawsuit. And that's what Aaron did. So you can say he did it in an aggressive way. You can say he did it out of nowhere and there wasn't this mutual understanding and there wasn't that specific guy accosting Aaron necessarily. But at the end of the day, he threw a harmless thing. Now, the other guy tried to claim, in addition to being the security guard, that he had respiratory issues, but and he was taken away on a gurney in full dramatic fashion. But hard to hold water to the claim when the guy is wearing a mask. And what that also shows is that Scientology had an understanding that chalk might be thrown in their face, and because of that, some of the people are interacting with them while wearing a mask. That does, in some sense, show that there's an understanding of the terms of interaction, right? If somebody put on a mask because they thought they might have respiratory issues and might get chalk thrown in their face, and they're still interacting, well, then that is kind of mutually assured destruction. You're going out there with the understanding that you might have chalk thrown at your face. Now, you probably use that as excuse, the mask as excuse if there are any respiratory issues, but there's also no way of Aaron to have they're extenuating circumstances unless the direct guy directly said, listen, if you throw chalk in my face, it might not be bad for other people, but it's really bad for me because I have respiratory issues and it's so damaging. It's reasonable expectation, right? It's reasonable, is it in the terms of what do you actually see in front of you? What could you reasonably assess the harm will actually be? And by anybody's reasonable assessment, because the security guard never said that he was compromised respiratorily or there'd be a significant amount of damage, which I don't think there would be a significant amount of damage should any chalk be thrown at his body or at his face or anything like that. That all goes out the window. So the hope was charging for a hate crime, charging for felony assault. It all got winnowed down to simple battery. So they wanted a felony. It got winnowed down simply to a misdemeanor, which is not too surprising. But you can see the effort that Scientology tries to go. And they really have a very, not intelligent because they weren't successful, but they have a complicated, intricate plan before going out and doing all this, right? They always need a stooge, and you can hate DOA, and I think he should get his bail revoked, but the original charge was kind of BS, and it was something similar. Scientology positions people in the correct position where they could get the most effective legal charge against a protester, and they're smart to maneuver people. And again, I think with the Motley, although there's no mutually assured destruction in California, I think with the Motley Crue situation, there was obviously hot words being exchanged. There was obviously some goading. So it's not really a cut and dry assault of somebody being this poor defenseless victim. And I do feel that we have to have consistency. I know people are on one side or the other, but I do feel that we should show some consistency in just being against a lot of these unfounded arrests. I still can't find, Aaron is going through the same thing that Nance Drew just went through. I don't think Nance Drew should have been charged in the first place. It's a shame that Aaron was never supportive of her, and people were a little complicated because Nance Drew got a favorable plea deal as a result, which she pleaded to the same thing that Aaron is being charged with currently. It's a shame because some people kind of felt like she ran off with the money and never proved that she actually employed a lawyer other than a court-appointed one, or never proved that she paid for a lawyer subsequently after the first hearing where she might have utilized one. But that's the thing. I don't think she should ever have been arrested in the first place because, again, Scientology got somebody to very specifically position and very specifically goad Nance Drew to the point where they would get her to react in a way where they could successfully get a charge against her. So this has unilaterally happened a number of times. And of course, you have all the evidence for the restraining orders. People trying to get a restraining order against Streets LA for simple words. Efforts with Philip Campos, with Danny saying that Danny committed assault via scooter, whereas actually the other person going to commit the assault. So this is a common tactic, and I do think we have to have consistency in calling out egregious arrests, whomever they might happen to, whoever side that you might be on with. And this is just another example of an egregious arrest and of Scientology using everything they can, trying to blow things up, and really exhibiting their corruption in an effort to defend themselves, in an effort to get the protesters to stop protesting. Because another thing is, Aaron said he's going to fight this and plead not guilty. Do let me know, guys. Florida is easy. Aaron is no fan of mine. I called out his behavior. I don't regret that. 6 months later, I don't think his behavior is relevant. Everybody is an adult. I'm not holding it against him now at this point. He's been with Jenna for such a long time. I thought his behavior was egregious very early on, but he might have done some soul searching, whatever. I think he's a valuable part of the movement. End of story. So what's in the past is in the past. Nothing worse has come up. And Jenna's 40 years old. She's not 19 years old, right? So she can make her own decisions and I'm not holding it against him now at this point. Perhaps he did some soul searching, perhaps he did not. Although Lindsay did tell me to service her male genitalia, which I will decline to do so. But Lindsay, the ex-paramour perhaps of Aaron, got mad that I called her a groupie once. And she wasn't a groupie because she knew Aaron from before. So she did, I did want to address that. Although she has every right to say how she's feeling, and I respect that, and I think she's been unhappy that I've just kind of felt like at this point, bygones are bygones, and he's done some good, consistent work, and that's, again, I'm never going to apologize for speaking out against him, and I think his behavior was abusive, but at this point, I don't think it's a relevant factor anymore, and it seems like he's resolved what he's needed to resolve, and I think you can hold somebody's actions against them in the past, and say that they need to change and have better behavior, that it's not a good look for the community at large. But I think you could also say, at this point, the situation internally has probably resolved itself, and it's just not as relevant anymore. And so, even regardless of whether it's not as relevant or whatever, it's always, I think, most effective to stand up for anybody who has an unjust arrest by Scientology. So Aaron is certainly one of them. As I said before, he's looking at a total of 6 months in the county jail, although that's, in reality, when you're looking at battery, probably you might at maximum be sentenced to a week or something. So Aaron, interesting enough, another thing that happened to him is he actually spent the night in jail, which is different. In Los Angeles, when he got arrested for potential assault that they did drop, he was released that day. So he did spend the full night. I don't think he's raising anything for his legal funds. Not that he would, because this is such a minor thing. And Nance Drew pled guilty to the same charge that Aaron has. Nance Drew did not get any jail time. So I don't think he's raising money. And do let me know if you want me to fly down to Clearwater to attend the next hearing. That's what I was talking about before. I don't know if Aaron will want me there. My guess is Aaron won't care one direction or another. But I think it's an important thing to report on. So let me know if you'd like me to fly down there. I'm sure Aaron will announce the next court date. It's a lot easier to fly to Tampa. I got some family in Tampa, too, so I wouldn't even have to stay at a hotel. It'll be a hell of a lot easier to fly to Tampa than it is to Los Angeles. But speaking of Los Angeles, I will be flying out to LA on the 3rd to cover DOA's latest development on the 4th of August, as well as some other topics that you might not be interested in, but I also want to try to get a new audience. There's other stuff happening in addition to Scientology. I think one guy's name is Alejandro Orellana, and he is a big anti-ICE activist that is facing deportation charges from the Trump administration. So he has an early hearing in Los Angeles about 2 days after DOA, so I'm going to go to that. Also talk to some people outside of the hearing, and I think it's interesting to get some interesting on-the-ground news. And then the following Monday, I'm going to be in California for a while. I'm going to take a bus up to San Francisco, fly out of San Francisco, because there's a trial happening. Gavin Newsom has issued a lawsuit against Trump. Gavin Newsom claiming that Trump unfairly employed the National Guard without going through the proper channels, i.e. him, to utilize them. It'll be interesting how that case goes, because do remember Dwight Eisenhower, 1957, Little Rock, did not overstepped Orville Faubus, who was the governor of Little Rock, to send the National Guard in. That's why one of the reasons he's my favorite president. To send the National Guard in to safely escort the Little Rock Nine. So it'll be interesting to see the legalese and things people are talking about. Also, today I have probably 2 hours after this video is released, we'll have a live stream on a stream called E.T. Phone Jones, and she with a woman who was at the Diddy trial the whole time and has an interest in that case. So I spent a lot of time at the Diddy trial, so I'll talk to her today. And tomorrow we'll have a stream about Henry. So Henry will give me his expert analysis. A guy knows a lot like the back of his hands. He'll give me his expert analysis on what's been happening with DOA and this recent arrest by Aaron. I've gotten a lot of my information from him, of which I appreciate. So, and then we'll also talk about the corruption of Heidi Feldstein Soto and a lot of the crooks at the DA's office in Los Angeles County. So we'll be uncovering a lot of connections, a lot of hidden truths. So I mean, you know, as I've said in the live stream, people say, Dodge, you claim to be an investigative reporter. I've never claimed to be an investigative reporter. I am just somebody who shows up and gives information in opportunities where others couldn't give the information, or I condense things. It's not really, you know, like today I condensed what happened to Aaron instead of having to watch the full stream. I have no excuse. I'm just too lazy to do investigative reporting. But Henry is an investigative reporter in a lot of regards. So we'll talk about that and probably have a good time and chew on a lot of stuff. And maybe I'll start to investigate stuff after we have that conversation. So do stick around, and glad you enjoyed the lives. It had some unmodded chats, a lot of crazy people saying a lot of crazy things, but bring it on. And yeah, I think that's the crux of it. Looking to see if I missed anything. No, that's the crux. Again, an unjust arrest. And here's this is the last thing I'll say. You have to think for yourself as a protester. A lot of people have been saying, as a protester, don't get arrested, don't get arrested, don't get arrested. I don't know. If you really want to help the movement, if you are willing to go through it, it might be helpful to get arrested. Because the moment that Aaron got arrested, the news of his Scientology protest became broadcasted beyond simply the anti-Scientology world. For example, there's this page on Reddit called Cults, just cults in general, and I think they have like 10,000 members, a lot more than any of the Scientology Reddit stuff have. And they posted a post that got a lot of interaction about Aaron and his egregious arrest. So already his protest of Scientology, because of the arrest, is getting attention beyond just the anti-Scientology world. So if you want to, the big thing is, if you're doing that, don't ask people for money. If you know you might get arrested, you have that on yourself. Don't try to raise from other people. Don't get mad at other people if they don't help you. But if you're willing to go through the consequences alone, then it's good publicity. The problem is, if you're not, then you seem like a whiny little baby who's pathetic and shouldn't have goated Scientology in the first place. I perhaps could think of DOA, could perhaps think of Nance Drew in that specific situation. So if you want to get arrested, go for it. Make sure you're a good communicator, get that press, but don't really ask other people to help you. Because Aaron knew the whole time, right? I mean, that's the other argument, that Aaron knew the whole time that he'd face some sort of arrest by inching closer and closer to the flag building, because they said they would trespass him otherwise. So he's already on thin ice. Was the arrest still unfair? Yes, completely. But he perhaps had some knowledge that he might get arrested from it. So take from that what you will. But that's the rub, and I will see you on the 4th. Hasta luego.